What's up, guys? Welcome back to Zilla MMA. I am your host, as always, the Zilla. Long time no see, guys. We've had a little bit of a break here, but I'm excited to be back making another video. Um, got a little streak of cards coming up, so going to be putting out a lot of content. Make sure you are subscribed so you see when it's coming out. Like the video, help us get this out there to the public. Leave some comments with your picks for this card as well. I always really appreciate seeing that from you guys. We had some great reception on our last recap video, and because of that, we do have a little bit of a surprise at the end of this video. One big announcement, and I'm actually not going to go into UFC announcements right now and everything. I know there's a lot going on with news in the UFC and everything right now. That's for another time. We're breaking down this card right now. But we do have an announcement as a channel. We have officially reached 1,000 total views over our videos. So appreciated. So happy to be there. Lawson, thank you so much for your contribution in the last video. Helped get us over the hump there. Got a couple new subscribers, up to 18 last I checked. Really appreciate you guys as well. Share it with everybody you know. Keep growing it. Things are looking really good. We're really happy with where we are right now. So thank you guys. I really do appreciate that. But we'll go ahead and get into breaking down this card. I know these are the videos that people really want to come for. They really want to get the opinions of other people on these cards. So we'll get into it. We've got UFC Fight Night, Dolidze versus Imavov. Not the best card in the world, to be honest. Not exactly the one you want to come off a break to. Unfortunately, but there's a few good fights on here for sure, and I'm going to break down every one of them, and you will get that benefit. So we'll go ahead and start here. We have Thomas Petersen versus Jamal Pogues. Petersen coming in here as the -165 favorite. Start with everyone's favorite here, guys. It's low-level heavyweights. Obviously, you're never going to feel good about either side that you are going to take it in a fight like this, but you know, I'm going to give you a choice here. So on occasion where we have two heavyweights that honestly I just really don't feel like have that much finishing ability. I don't see it from either of these guys here. And, you know, normally at least one of the two are some kind of knockout artist. Not really here. Not fantastic striking from either of them. I would slightly lean Petersen after watching the tape on this, though. It's really close. If I had to find an angle for this one, it's probably going to be Petersen's edge in the wrestling department. He should be able to land the takedowns against Pogues, shown the ability to land ground and pound as well as work for submissions. So I do hesitate to take him just because of how green he is. We've kind of gotten burned on these young, well, not even that young, but new to the UFC. So these newer fighters kind of been burned on them lately. But I just don't really like what I've seen out of Pogues. I honestly think he may come into this fight out of shape, just coming in here to get that paycheck. And so for those reasons, I think Petersen is going to be the side to take here. So I'm going to take Petersen by decision. Moving into our next fight, we have Markel Mederos versus Landon Quinones. Mederos, the favorite here at -140. Genuinely a little surprised to see Mederos as the favorite here. I really thought Quinones was when I initially saw that this fight was booked. Quinones is a dog. You know, I'm not going to take anything away from Mederos here, but I'm very excited to see him as a dog. He had a very impressive debut on Dana White's Contender Series. Landed a beautifully timed knee, Mederos did, and got the finish. Flashed those hands early, and it's honestly really impressive. So like I said, I'm not going to take anything away from the guy, but Quinones just as impressive, if not more, in his UFC debut. He got thrown out to the Wolves fighting Haqparast, and I know he took a loss there. If you're just looking at wins and losses, you may say that that you want to side with the favorite here, but he really went out there and went to war with him. Went out there, landed some leg kicks, flashed some really polished boxing. Kind of looked like a UFC vet out there in his debut. You don't see that every day from fighters. Also, he's just put in a bunch of work in becoming a well-rounded fighter. Traditionally, just a striker. I think he would have the edge on the ground at this point if the fight ends up there. But I really just expect this to be a war on the feet. This could be one of the best fights of the night. right up here at the beginning of the card. So you love to see that. I'm going to side with Quinones here. He's going to work the leg kicks, throw some crisp striking. I think he's going to outlast Mederos here. Getting him as a dog is a big factor as well. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to take on this one for me. It's going to be Quinones by TKO. Moving into our next fight, we have Julius Stoliarenko versus Luana Carolina. Stoliarenko, the favorite here at minus 130. Just an awful fight in my opinion. And this isn't even just me hating on the women's MMA. I know a lot of people like to go for that low-hanging fruit. These are low-level women in women's MMA. Neither of them really impressed me in any way whatsoever. The only redeeming factor here that I can really think of is those arm bars of Stoliarenko. She does have a decent submission game. Striking, I don't really have faith in either of them. Wrestling, I don't have faith in either of them. It just kind of makes this a tough fight to break down. I guess you can look at MMA math if you really want to. I've warned you before, that's really not an effective way in looking at common opponents and figuring out who's going to win. It honestly is usually pretty useless just because it makes a difference the styles of the two fighters who are now facing off. But if you go look at that, they do have Molly McCann, who's also fighting on this card as a common opponent. Stoliarenko executing one of those arm bars we discussed just a minute ago and getting the win. And Carolina falling victim to one of McCann's spinning back fists that got her so popular. Or spinning elbows, I guess it was in that case. Obviously not a lot of confidence here, but I guess the few positives I do have are going towards Stoliarenko. So I'm going to side with Stoliarenko in this one. I'm going to take her by submission. Next fight, we have Blake Bilder versus Jong Lee. Lee coming in here as the minus 150 favorite. Not really crazy about either of these guys either. Just not that impressed from what I've seen from either of them to this point. And like I said earlier, I'm really concerned right now about green fighters. There's a lot of fighters with a lot of promise that are coming in here lately, and it seems like we're getting burned by them losing in debuts. And, that's nothing to say that they can't develop into their career, but it makes me a little hesitant to take guys early in their careers like this. So green fighters is concerning, and Lee falls into that category. A lot of people are making a lot of his road to the UFC accomplishments. I'm a little worried about the caliber of fighters that you're fighting in that format. Not the best guys in the world, not the kind of competition that you see at this level, not fighting on this same stage, so that makes a big difference. To Lee's credit, though, he's a solid striker, has a lot of power in his hands, but very susceptible to the takedowns. I'm worried that if Bilder comes in with the right game plan, he could have the edge in that department if he's preparing for it. I also could see Bilder landing more shots, to be honest. I think Lee clearly has the power advantage, but Bilder could come in there and get the volume, which could get him up on the scorecards if he's not eating too much damage in the fight. Definitely a low confidence pick here, and I may just be scared about being burned by green fighters recently, but I think I'm going to have to ride with Bilder here. I'm going to take him in this spot by decision. Next up, we have Themba Gorimbo versus Pete Rodriguez. Gorimbo coming here as the minus 260 favorite. And this line's just a little bit off to me. I don't like it at this line. I love Gorimbo. I love his story. I think he seems to be a great guy, and I'm definitely rooting for him, but I just don't see him as a minus 260 favorite here. He should certainly have a grappling advantage here. And if he gets into the ground, I think he's probably the right side, but I don't like what I've seen from him on the feet, just going back and watching the tape. I think Rodriguez is a very solid striker, but he's still a little tough to judge with the two UFC fights being against a guy who's as good as Jack Maddalena. It's hard to fault him for losing that one, but then fights a guy as bad as Mike Jackson. We don't learn that much about him as a fighter. So, but I have liked a lot of what I've seen from him. So with this being a 50-50 fight and really coming down to, who can dictate where the fight's going to take place, whether this is going to be on the feet or down on the mat, I think I'm going to have to ride with the dog money here. A pretty big dog, but I'm going to take Pete here to get the knockout. So we're going to go with Rodriguez here by KO. Next up, we have Charles Johnson versus Azat Maksum. Maksum, the minus 215 favorite in this fight. So I really like Charles Johnson. I'm pretty sure I've talked about it on here before. I would love to take him here, but I think I finally learned my lesson with Charles Johnson. You just don't back him against good wrestlers. He just is so susceptible to the takedowns. We took him in his last fight against Estevam, used the logic that, oh, this guy's not the caliber of the wrestler as the other guys he's been fighting against. He's going to be able to keep it on the feet. He's been working on his takedown defense. Turns out it doesn't matter. Charles Johnson's going to get taken down. It is what it is. I also feel like he's been rushing back to the octagon lately, which, you know, in Dana White's eyes might be a positive, but maybe not, because he keeps getting thrown into these really difficult fights that are bad matchups for him. He's fighting like 4 times a year, and I really think it's starting to have an effect on his durability and his gas tank. He's coming into this fight against Maksum, who is, of course, one of those Russian area wrestlers. And I honestly haven't seen enough of Maksum to know whether he's going to be good or not long term. But this is just an absolute nightmare matchup for Charles, you know, based on what we've seen from him lately. Coming in on short notice, unfortunately, as much as I'd like to back Charles, and, you know, that just makes me more confident in this pick, the fact that I'm not going to back him, it's a no-brainer. I'm going to have to go with Maksum here. So give me Maksum by decision. Next up, we have Molly McCann versus Diana Belbita. McCann coming in here as the minus 275 favorite. I do not buy into the Molly McCann hype. I think she's gotten a lot of it undeservingly, if we're being honest. Got a bunch of that popularity, got the bump for, throwing those spinning elbows, spinning back fists, being friends with Patty Pimblett, coming to the deal with Barstool. And that's no hate on them or anything that they do, but, maybe some of this hype of her as a fighter isn't justified. And, I have heard from other people I've been listening to that it seems a lot of people are starting to back off the hype of her, but looking at this number, it really doesn't seem that way. I'm not going to pretend like Belbita is some world beater, but this will be a tough fight, for Molly. This is not somebody that she's just going to be able to run over. And I know she lost her last fight to Kovacevic. I'm pretty sure it was unanimous 30-27. But I saw a lot out of her that makes me think that she can win this. She's making a lot of improvements to her game. And honestly, I feel like Molly kind of has one foot out the door. I don't have a lot of confidence in her as a fighter. This is certainly not going to be the same rookie Belbita. These two have faced before in Belbita's first fight in the UFC, and she's not the same person that she was then. She's still developing as a fighter, and I kind of don't feel the same way about Molly. I think she's seeing a different fighter, and I think Belbita might have enough to get it done this time. I think she's worth the dog play here, so I'm going to take Belbita in this fight by decision. Next up, we have Gilbert Urbina versus Charles Radtke. Urbina at minus 210. A little surprised to see either of these fighters facing, on this card, especially facing off against each other. Neither of them really seem like UFC caliber to me. These are usually the guys they bring in as kind of a warm-up fight for, a prospect that they're trying to groom in the UFC. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they see something different in these guys than I do. I don't see UFC caliber when I look at them, but as an overall martial artist, I'm going to have to give the edge to Gilbert here. Followed him a good bit on his Ultimate Fighter season, watched that season start to finish and was pretty invested in it. And he wasn't an amazing fighter, but he's pretty solid everywhere. And he did enough to get the call-up as the replacement fighter. He wasn't one of the two in the final for Tough that season, but with one fighter having to pull out, he did get the call-up as the replacement. Did lose that fight, though. But in this matchup, he's going to have a massive size advantage. Probably going to be the faster fighter. Probably going to be the stronger fighter. I won't completely discount Radtke's power and grappling ability, but I just don't see enough from him for this to be a spot where he's going to be able to go out there and get the win. So I'll take Gilbert here. I'll take him by KO. Next up, we have Salikhov Khizriev versus Mahmoud Muradov. Khizriev is minus 155. Uh, this fight's difficult for me, and really only for one reason, and it's the inactivity of Khizriev. Just facing injuries and pullouts since he joined the UFC after a Contender Series fight in 2020. Only fought once since then. Just constant fights falling off of cards with him. The tape I've seen is pretty impressive. Yet another Russian wrestler who knows how to get the back, knows how to get a finish in a fight, but I just haven't been able to see enough of him to be super confident here. And, Muradov on the other side, he has the power and skills on the feet to get this done, but I'm concerned about his ability to keep Khizriev on the outside. He has solid wrestling of his own, but against a guy like this, it's not really the time you want to go out there and have to test it. I'm going to go with Khizriev in this spot. We're in the apex. We're in the small octagon. He's going to be able to force the pressure, going to be able to get the takedowns. I think he's eventually going to get the submission here, so I will take him by submission in this spot. Next up, we have Vivian Araujo versus Natalia Silva. Silva, the favorite here at minus 350. Hard not to love what you've seen from Silva so far in the UFC. Just quickly rising as a prospect, showing off all her skills everywhere in the octagon. Very fast, powerful, great kickboxing, solid grappling at this point. She's just certainly becoming a fighter to watch in this weight class, but this fight definitely seems like one that is designed to be a test for her. Araujo certainly seems to be on a quick decline, but she's done her time in the UFC. She's faced some of the top tier talent in this weight class. She's deserving of her props. So not going to criticize her too much here, but I think she could give Silva some trouble early in this fight. But the issue is going to develop as this goes on. That this age gap is just going to become a huge factor between these two. Outside of catching some kind of fluke sub, I don't see a world where Araujo is going to be able to get the finish in this fight. And her cardio just isn't where it needs to be at this point in her career. I expect the longer it goes, the more blatant the gap between these two is going to appear. Credit to Araujo, she's proved me wrong before. Her last fight against Jennifer Maia, I was on Maia there, and she was able to get the win, but Silva's an entirely different beast. I like her a lot. I think she's going to go out and get the finish here. So give me Silva by KO. Next up, we have Randy Brown versus Muslim Salikhov. Brown coming in here as the minus 260 favorite. Rescheduled fight. This fight was on UFC 296. I broke it down. I had already done the breakdown before it got pulled off then. Not much changed about how I feel about this fight, so should just be a recap of that analysis. Line is exactly the same. Still like Brown a good bit in the spot for the same reasons I said previously. Just physically better everywhere, taller, longer, younger. I think he's going to be able to be effective, keep it at range, be able to keep Salikhov off of him. Should have the edge in the takedown department as well if he decides to use it, in my opinion. I think the biggest danger he's going to face is the leg kicks. We've historically seen him take some damage from them. Salikhov can throw them, but I feel pretty good about this one. I think Brown's going to be able to go out there, get the win in this fight, so I'm going to take Brown here by decision. Next up, we got the co-main event, Renato Moicano versus Drew Dober. Moicano coming in as the favorite at minus 185. Might be the toughest one on the card for me to pick, if I'm being honest here. Love the game of both of these guys. Really different fighters, but just love both their games. Dober obviously coming in here to throw. Great power, great pressure. And I guess we're still saying a great chin. That's starting to become a little bit questionable, but I'm not going to fault anyone for taking Dober in this spot. I love Dober's game. With Moicano on the other side, again, love his game too. Solid striking of his own. But he's going to be really dangerous if this gets to the ground. Just such smooth transitions, great submission game. I'm truly kind of torn here. Both these guys are heading towards the back end of their careers. Both of them have taken plenty of damage and starting to show it a bit. Just seeing some holes in these guys' games that wasn't previously there. Things like the chin of Dober. it's kind of sad to see if we're being honest about it, but he may make me regret this. I'm gonna side with Dober one last time. I'm gonna take him to catch Moicano in here, go out there, get the win, maybe make another run here. I like Drew Dober. I want to back him, and so I'm gonna do it here. I'm gonna take Dober by KO. And finally, we have our main event. Roman Dolidze versus Nasruddin Imavov. Imavov coming in here as the favorite at minus 170. This fight's kind of, catching a good bit of hate this week. And it's for it being the main event of this card. And I get that. But this is still a great fight. And so I think it's deserving of some good analysis because I like both of these fighters. I think they both bring something to the table. But right off the bat, I'm going to tell you who we're siding with. I'm going to be backing Imavov here. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you what we have to be afraid of in this spot. First of all, the power of Dolidze. Not as technical as Imavov, not even close in my opinion, but he definitely has the power to finish this at any time. He also has his ground game. I probably still give the wrestling edge to Imavov, but on the mat, jiu-jitsu of Dolidze is very scary. But the reason I can't back Dolidze in this spot, I just don't trust that gas tank. And if you're watching other people talk about this fight, I think you're probably going to hear that too. Just something that a lot of people have been saying this week. I go watch the tape. It really scares me. He likes to, pressure the fighters. He likes to be in the fighter's face. Imavov is going to make that difficult. He's going to be trying to stick to the outside. He's going to try and pick Dolidze apart. He can wrestle if he needs to, and he's going to make this very difficult for Dolidze. For a guy who already has some cardio questions coming into this matchup in a 5-round fight, it just doesn't make a lot of sense in my mind to back a guy who has cardio issues. I just don't see Dolidze having the juice he needs later in the later rounds of this fight for 5 rounds. So I think if he can't get the finish early here, I think Imavov just, with that fantastic striking he has, picking him apart at range, I think he cruises to a decision, pouring it on in the later rounds. So my pick in this fight is going to be Imavov by decision. All right, and regarding bets for this fight, as I showed you in our last one, I'm going to start giving confidence rankings. So these are my confidence rankings going for this card. 3 of them I have in the green tier this week. That's going to be Silva, Maksum, and Brown. The next tier down, obviously, you could bet them, but they're kind of close fights on whether I see value in betting them or not as far as my confidence goes. And then that bottom tier, a little bigger than I normally like it to be, but it's just one of those cards. This is going to be a tough card to bet on. And you'll see that reflected in my bets. Only giving you 3 of them this week. We have a parlay between Silva and Brown here, coming in at minus 135. And then 2 dog plays that I like, Quinones at plus 115 and Drew Dober at plus 155. Regarding our prize picks, we have 3 of them, as we usually do. First one's going to be Maksum here. Getting over 3.5 takedowns. Like I said, I like Charles Johnson. He's going to struggle to prevent the takedown here. So I think that's a really good play in this fight. Next is Molly McCann, under 2 takedowns. And, I don't personally think she's going to win this fight. I don't think she's going to have an easy time getting these takedowns, as a lot of people think she's going to have. So I'm going to take under 2 takedowns for Molly McCann in that fight. And then we have Imavov. I'm going to take him over 69.5 significant strikes. Like I said, I think he's going to be able to stay on the outside, land those significant strikes, and I think that's going to be his path to victory in this fight. But that's going to do it for these bets. Now, like I said, I do have one more special thing for you on this video, so stay tuned. It's time for Lawson's Lock of the Week. All right, so I did promise you guys a special appearance on this video. and it is the return of Lawson. You know, Lawson, you had a great performance in your first video, and I just loved everything you said in that video and talked about how you wanted to get more into deep analysis in MMA. And I've been hesitant to bring other people on here just because of how much work I put into making these picks and making these videos. And I wanted other people who take it seriously. I plan on bringing more people in soon. But you just had such a great performance. I really wanted to bring you back on, and so we've been working on this little idea of Lawson's lock of the week. So Lawson, how are you feeling about all that?
I'm not feeling great. I'm feeling great about the segment, but the lock of the week this week, we'll see.
It's a
We will
tough card
see.
for sure. It's definitely a tough card. A lot of really tough fights to analyze. As they'll see on my confidence rankings, I only have three that I even really feel good about this week. But let's go ahead and get into your pick. The video's running pretty long, so we'll go ahead and get to your pick and talk about it. I don't know what it's going to be yet, so we will see what you're going with.
So this week I'm going with Jung Young Lee over Blake Bilder at minus 160. I believe that, both of these guys, there's a lot of unknowns. And after watching tape, today and reading a couple articles and kind of just looking at interviews, I think that Lee is definitely the way to go. I think it's almost a coin flip. Um, just a couple things that I've watched and read have kind of, made me lean towards Lee. So that's what I'm going with this week.
Okay, so those of you who have watched up to this point and looked at my confidence rankings, um, you know I'm on Builder, but I have him as my least confident fighter this week. Um, and honestly, going against Lee, I do have a little bit of concerns about his takedown defense, even though he did show it pretty well in this last fight. But I definitely think he has some power, has some good striking. My main concern, as I kind of went on a rant on about in this video, is just how green he is, and I feel like I've been burnt a lot lately by green fighters. You know, guys coming in who he's not an inexperienced fighter, but not against UFC talent necessarily. And so I have concerns. You know, obviously just going through his road to the UFC and getting this spot here. I um I have some concerns about a fighter who has not seen this level of competition before coming in and getting this win. So what have you seen in the tape that has really uh you know gotten rid of those? Is it more credit to Lee or a detriment to the other side in this fight?
Well, for starters, I think both of these guys are going to come out and kind of have something to prove. Lee, I think that, in his last fight, he stuffed a bunch of takedowns. I think he was like 16. He stuffed 16 takedowns last fight. Most of the most of the control time where he was being controlled came in the last round when he was gassed. So honestly, like takedown defense might be a little bit shaky, but he showed last fight that he definitely can defend it. Also, I don't have any confidence in Bilder at all. Really, I went back and watched the last fight up in Vancouver, and I just didn't see anything that made me have any confidence in him whatsoever. Um, got beat in the first two rounds pretty clearly as well. Even his corner told him that you got to go out in round three and get the finish, and he did come out in round three and he kind of emptied the tank a little bit, and he looked all right. But I really don't think he's all that good. I think that in the end, Lee can definitely stop some of his takedowns and keep the fight, on their feet. I do think that for two guys that have never been finished before, I think that this could definitely be a fight for one of them to get finished. I like under 2.5 rounds as well. I think both of these guys are going to come out and really kind of give it their all. They both, like I said, have something to prove. So in the end, I think Lee takes it, but I really think that, this fight does not go the distance. I think someone gets a finish here.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And the more we talk about it, the more I really see there may have been a little flaw in my analysis. And this is why I love having someone like you come on, someone I know has put in the work watching the tape for this fight. Because I think a lot of the reason I went against Lee here was not to credit Builder, but be concerned about what we have seen so far from Lee. And not even from a talent aspect, just that he hasn't faced this level of um of competition before. And I know he is coming off an injury. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I was reading a little bit today. Part of the reason he hadn't been in the octagon since last February is he did tear his ACL training before that last fight. So his last fight, he was fighting on a torn ACL. So by all accounts, everything should be good. Sounds like he's fully recovered for it. So I think that last fight, getting the win on a torn ACL, and that's pretty commendable. That's great. I think that he'll come out look like a better fighter this time around. There's just a lot of unknowns. Like I said, like he's gonna want to come out and he's gonna want to show that. I know that he said a lot of things that he was very disappointed that the last fight went to the judges. I think that he really wants to come out and set the tone, set the precedent that he wants to be a superstar. Going forward, who knows if he's gonna get there, but I think that he definitely wants to show that in this fight.
And this is really why I love having these conversations because you've made so many good points here. I'm not going to go back and change the graphics at this point, so I hope you watch through this segment. Lawson's lock of the week. I'm officially flipping my pick to Lee. Gonna keep it down at the bottom of my confidence rankings. As Lawson's pointed out, there is a lot of crazy factors going on with this fight. But you've kind of um, helped ease some of those concerns I've had about how green he is. I think the thing with the ACL is actually really interesting because winning that fight in that condition is just even more impressive to me. If he can come out here, stuff the takedowns if they're attempted on him, I'd really like to see some volume out of him in this fight. I'm a little concerned about him getting behind as far as volume striking, but I think he can get it done. You've kind of sold me on it, so I'm officially, glad I brought you on because I'm gonna flip that pick.
Awesome. Hopefully, we can start off 1-0.
That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Well, Austin, I'm really excited about this segment. Really excited to have you part of Zilla MMA. This is a really big thing for us. So thank you for coming on, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Awesome. Can't wait to be back.
All right, guys. So that's going to do it for this episode. Again, really appreciate Lawson coming in, giving us the Lawson Lock of the Week. As you saw, flipped one of those picks for us. So make sure you go and watch that segment. I think it's the best segment of the episode. And then I think we're actually going to try, no promises here, we're going to try and get our first live stream going for the main card this weekend. So you may hear from me before our recap video coming out on Sunday. But no promises there. We're going to see what we can do, but I'm really excited about trying to get that done. So going to work on that. But as always, appreciate you guys. Please go like and subscribe. Leave some picks down in the comments. Until next time, see ya.